I must take this wonderful human thing to
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark. Man, let me tell you, it's that time of year again. Spring season, springing right into summer here in the South.
Yeah, we don't even get a spring.
You know, allergies are a big old problem.
They are.
And I have like notorious allergy issues every year, but I stopped taking my daily allergy medicine because I don't want to take medicine every day.
I know.
And this sounds like an ad for something.
It really does.
So try out this great product.
Hey, I mean, partner with us. We both have really bad allergies. So
honestly, yeah, sure, totally do that. But I stopped taking my daily allergy pill. And I haven't really had any issues, which is fantastic. It feels like, you know, I've believed all the lies about like, take this pill and keep you healthy.
Yeah.
And I don't even need it. Like I'm not having that many issues. But today I sneezed for the first time this morning in weeks. Twice. I sneezed twice. And you know what I think it is?
What is it?
All this toxic sludge I have just oozing out of the walls in my house. Oh my God. I got slime beneath me.
Do you have
slime up above? It's all over my house.
I should have known that's where you were taking it.
I think it comes from my toxic love.
Are you allergic to toxic love? I think I'm allergic to toxic love.
I've had
straight up
a lot of toxic love in my life.
Same.
It's bad for me.
Well, it's also appropriate because we're talking about FernGully today, ladies and gentlemen. If you couldn't get it from the title of the episode.
Welcome to That's Pretty Dark.
Thems and theys.
We're
all
discussing
of you. Everybody is welcome
FernGully
here, where we are discussing FernGully.
Before we get too far, your name is Kaylin.
It is.
I'm Christian.
It is.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
On this lovely spring day.
And what better time to discuss a lovely, lush forest, rainforest environment than springtime?
I couldn't think of a better time myself. Not if I tried.
Man, why are we so cheesy today?
I don't know.
We woke up and we were just feeling cheesy.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, we're going to talk about FernGully today.
Sure are.
And we've been promising to talk about it ever since we released our Hexxus episode. We did a Toxic Love specific episode last year. And ever since then, we've been just threatening with FernGully. So we're finally here to make good on that promise. And honestly, I'm just glad that Christian has finally watched it because it is my most quoted, I would say. If that could be a superlative I give to a film from my childhood, it would be my most quoted. I quote FernGully multiple times a week.
I probably missed all of your quotes for 8 years.
Well, I was hoping that this would be the moment in time where you would truly start to understand me as a person, now that you've seen this movie.
I see. Okay. Well, it's good to finally, get to know you after all this time.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad to be here. And for you listeners out there, if you want to get into the FernGully spirit, if our discussion of, snot and slime didn't get you there, what I like to do when I'm gearing up to talk about FernGully or just, on a random Saturday morning is to crank up the soundtrack.
Warm up your pipes.
If you want to just be where I am mentally, yeah.
I said it before, I'll say it again. Don't threaten me with a good time. I enjoyed this movie.
I'm really glad to hear that you did.
I'm going to go on record here and say that it was a lot of fun.
I've been stressed that you wouldn't like it as much as I've hyped it up over the years. But I think it lives up to the hype. And it stands the test of time as well.
Oh, I mean, it's better than Avatar.
There you go. I was going to mention Avatar. Yeah, a lot of people compare it to Avatar, James Cameron's Avatar.
I am not impressed with that movie, especially now that I've seen this one.
Right? There you go. See, this is superior. The OG.
Absolutely.
FernGully. It was released theatrically on April 10th, 1992 in the US, and then in Australia on September 17th of 1992.
Oh, I see.
And surprisingly, perhaps, it is rated G.
Just got guidance.
Guidance. Or I don't know. G is general.
Yeah, it is.
PG is parental guidance suggested.
Yeah.
Which is what I would have given it if they asked me, but nobody did because I was.
G doesn't stand for gruesome.
It doesn't.
No.
Turns out.
Probably a good call.
Would you like a little tiny synopsis? I just did the tiniest of synopses. It's not my best work. I'm not proud of it.
I'll take a small one or a big one or a medium-sized one. Really, whatever you got.
Okay. Well, it's a small one, so.
Okay.
Sorry,
Small's fine. Small's great. I love small. Sure, small. Small's fine.
You love small. Okay.
Not small coffee.
No, large coffee.
Well, actually, I don't like many small things, but.
You like me?
Yeah.
Okay. So in FernGully, a community of fairies, they fight and use the forces of creation to save their home from logging and pollution in the form of a force of destruction called Hexxus.
Yeah.
While they also are educating the fabled human.
The fabled human.
Right.
I don't know. A lot of this movie surprised me. I don't know why I was so surprised to find that FernGully was the name of their little pocket of the forest.
Yes.
And it's like
FernGully
this
is where
place
the
that
fairies
everyone
live.
knows. Even the humans know what FernGully is.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll get into some of
Yeah,
it in the
all right.
placement. I don't think I really knew where in the world they were when I was watching it as a kid. But Mount Warning is an actual place in Australia.
Is it?
Yes. And
Oh.
the, which is, right, so ominous, Mount Warning.
Mount
And
Warning.
I think
I was like,
the
pretty on the
older-
nose there, guys. No, it's
it's a real place. It's an actual place. And
Shows you what little I know.
the wildlife kind of clued me in a little bit as I got a little bit older because there are kookaburra and platypi.
That's why
And-
there's kangaroos.
That's why there's kangaroos. Really,
That's
the
why
one
there's freaking
strategic
kangaroos in this
mama
forest.
kangaroo.
I was so confused. I was laughing. I was
Australia.
like, they just put a kangaroo in here because they could.
Nope.
No, wow.
Australia. The rainforests of Australia. Of course, it's not what you think of when you think of a rainforest. Most people go,
Nope.
other continents, but Australia has rainforests. And probably they had more 30 years ago when this came out
that's
than
true.
they even do now. So,
The more you know.
yeah. Well, I'm going to get into some facts about that in a little bit.
I'll stop interrupting you.
No, you're not at all. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this one. So, I just heard thunder.
Uh-oh.
Hey guys, by the way, there is a thunderstorm brewing outside of our homes as we are recording this.
There totally is.
So if you hear some things that sound like thunder and or rain,
Yeah.
that's probably what
You
you're
might hear a
hearing.
little bit of that.
Ooh,
That was perfect timing.
nature is on our side today.
Your magic.
That was my magic. I just conjured that.
Oh, thunder here at my house. That's the same thunder rolling from all the way from your house to my house.
Wild.
And it's funny because the first thing that happens with this movie when you turn it on is the big rolling thunder
That's right.
over all the
That's right.
distributor information.
Oh my god. This is so good. I'm in my feels today, guys. I
pretty
really
fun.
hope that you like FernGully because it's going to be a good
You're in
one.
your zone.
Okay.
Quick sidebar.
Yeah.
Quick sidebar. I was on a movie set in the past few months, and we were at this old abandoned factory warehouse thing, and it was dusk. And I was like, I guarantee you any second there are going to be bats flying around because that's where bats like to live in these abandoned old places. And within seconds, a bunch of bats began to fly through the air. And I freaked my teammate out because he was like, holy shit, you just summoned the bats. And so for a little while,
That's so great.
he was joking that I summon bats.
Dracula, king of the night.
He was like, I'm scared of you. I'm not hanging out with you anymore. It was pretty fun.
I don't blame him, honestly.
He told everybody on set that I summoned the bats. And I was like, well, there are worse reputations to have. So
Yeah. I would appreciate
anyway,
that.
we've summoned the thunder.
We summon the thunder. And you might be summoning a bat here soon as well.
Come on. Come on, little batty coda.
So I talked about it previously a little bit on the Hexxus episode, but the concept of FernGully actually came from this surfer dude named Wayne Young and his wife Diana, because they were telling their children these bedtime stories all about the fairies that lived in the forests near their home, and they lived in Byron Bay, Australia.
Nice.
So it was his passion, her passion for the environment around where they lived and these kind of sacred places that really brought it all to life.
Yeah.
And when they were hiring crew and everything for the film, they all kind of came together and agreed that the real motivation behind the film was to convey this real life magic that's found in these rainforests and to cultivate a logical, empirical appreciation for nature and an awareness of this reality that the creatures in these spaces have so much more of a right to be there than we ever will.
Yeah, totally.
And that was kind of the idea behind it. That's what motivated it.
It's nice.
Through time and space to create what we now know as FernGully.
Wow.
And getting off on that foot, the conception and production of the film is not a short story at all. But for the sake of Christian's edit and this episode, I'm going to try to make it one.
For my mental health, my future mental health.
Christian's future mental health.
Thank you.
So Diana, Wayne's wife, she actually wrote the original concept over 15 years before the film was released.
For the movie or just the little stories that she was writing?
The concept for the movie.
Okay.
Like the concept of FernGully. Gotcha. I think the general framework for it.
I see. Wow.
Yeah. And Wayne, the surfer guy, Diana's husband, seemed to be very like nature focused dude. Mm-hmm. I was surprised to learn, as I did my research for this episode, that he ended up working as an associate producer on Crocodile Dundee in 1986 when they were down in Australia.
Incredible.
And that move by him is what helped him get his foot into some really important Hollywood doors that would lead to the making of FernGully.
That's way too fun.
Right?
Yeah.
So Wayne met the director, FernGully's director, Bill Croyer, and Bill at the time was also really deep into art and the early like visual effects movement of the 80s. He was known for working as a storyboard artist for Tron, the original Tron in the 80s.
Yeah.
And also Nightmare on Elm Street, which I thought was really interesting. And
that's my heart.
He worked as an animator on Disney's Fox and the Hound. So he was also a Disney alum at the time.
Wow. So he worked with Tim Burton.
Yeah, he would have.
He did concept art for that.
Yeah. And so he kind of took a special interest in helping FernGully come to life from that point on. He saw how passionate that Wayne and Diana were about the project. And so he and his wife had actually started Croyer Films to produce a short film called Technological Threat in the 80s as well. And they had a team of about 16 people. And so when they met Wayne and Diana, they grew that team to about 40 new hires specifically to produce FernGully.
Wow. Technical Threat. That sounds like such an 80s
Technological Threat. Yeah. Very 80s. Because it was all like they were just kind of learning computer generated graphics. Mm-hmm. All the CGI movement was really just getting started at the time.
Right.
Nice. I also included some fun facts about Bill because he also animated the opening credits for National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Yes. God.
And he also acted as animation director for the early 2000s Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Jeez Louise,
which
I
just,
so
like it's such a random thing, but he was the animation director specifically. I don't know what they put in that movie, but me and my like young conservative teenage friends in the early 2000s, man, I think I had a Narnia poster on my wall at one point. It was to that point.
We watched that movie so many times in school.
Yeah, it was just safe, I guess, for our conservative.
Now I'm pumped for when they actually do the full like series remake of all of them.
Yeah, because they're supposed to, I think.
They've been talking about it forever. But anyway.
Yeah. So
Narnia
in addition,
talk.
So we've no more Narnia talk. Although Narnia, FernGully, it's all kind of the same.
It'll come
vibe.
back up. Oh, Narnia is referenced in the Skeleton Man.
Really?
I didn't say that. There's a bunch of references in there, but she's a reader too.
Narnia is quite ubiquitous.
Yeah, she references a lot of things. Anyway, Narnia was one of them. She wanted a wardrobe to crawl into and find a new place to go.
Don't we all, Molly?
Yeah,
Don't
every
we
day.
All? So
every day.
We've got, Wayne Young, we've got Bill Croyer, and their wives, which they are referenced throughout I actually read a Vanity Fair article that had a lot of these details where they had interviewed Wayne. So I think it's really cool that they both worked with their wives on these stories and this production. I think that's
special
super
thanks
cool.
to the wives of the men who made this movie.
Special thanks to the 4 people who made this movie.
Right.
Wayne, Diana, Bill, and Susan. They also got Jim Cox on board, and he had done the first 2 treatments of the script for Beauty and the Beast, and he had also done the script for Oliver and Company and The Rescuers Down Under.
Good Lord.
So obviously they had this talent for the screenwriter, and that to me is a lot of the magic of FernGully is in the script. I think the dialogue and the script for FernGully is so smart.
It really is. I was impressed with it. It was pretty, it had its silly moments, but it was pretty...
It's poignant in a strange way.
I don't want to say mature, but it just didn't talk down to the audience.
Right, not at all.
Knowing it would be for kids.
Not at all.
It was silly, but it wasn't.
It wasn't so silly
simple.
that you lose the message.
Right.
And that's true, yeah. Not simple at all.
Not simple.
And their production also was not simple.
No.
Would you like to know why?
Hit me.
So once they had started to set up shop, Jim, who obviously was kind of a Disney alumni, he took Wayne on a tour of Disney's animation studios, which was being managed at the time by producer Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was doing Aladdin and all these other Disney Renaissance movies.
Yeah.
And he took him on a tour with someone else's name on the name tag because he didn't want anybody to know who he was or why he was there, essentially.
Right.
And he was pointing out people that they needed to hire from Disney. And
that's cool.
Of course, when Katzenberg got wind of this, he got pretty angry. So this maneuver, along with the casting of Robin Williams, which I will talk all about in just a second.
Yes.
This made Katzenberg very, very, very angry and led to several spats and disagreements and arguments down the road. Apparently, Wayne and Bill, they tried to rent 2 different facilities and Disney paid more and bumped them out of both of them.
Petty.
Yeah. And they finally found a suitable space in what was a former brewery. And Disney tried to buy that too. In this interview, Wayne Young said that Katzenberg brought in a team of 8 or 10 people just to do a walkthrough one day and was really trying to intimidate them. And they had to scramble to cover up all their art and everything. Yeah. When they came through, it was a power play.
Sure.
But he said it was really about Robin Williams and their kind of feud over that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't often find myself in a position to root against Disney, but in this case, kind of,
it keeps popping up.
I know there are all these little studios and smaller groups, production groups that really try to make art, and Disney doesn't like it. Disney doesn't like it when it's not them.
Right.
Some of the animators that they snagged from Disney included the lead animator for Hexxus, which we talked about in the episode before, Kathy Zielinski, who had completed supervising animation for Ursula and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Frollo, and some Jafar stuff, and several other veteran animators from Oliver and Company and The Little Mermaid. But interestingly enough, as I started to look into all the people that worked on FernGully, I found that a lot of the animators actually went on to work for Disney and Pixar after FernGully. They hadn't worked there before and worked there after. So if anything, I think Wayne and Bill actually did Katzenberg a favor. Yeah. Because they were scouting out a lot of this talent that ended up working at Disney. And still, a lot of them still do.
Benefited them in the long run.
For example, one of the leading animators for Krista's character, his name's Doug Frankel. And he went on to lead animation for Quasimodo, Scar, Stitch. Wow. And has worked on a ton of Pixar projects. And he's even working on the new Buzz Lightyear film that's coming out.
Insane.
So these people, they've all been in it for a long time. Or a lot of them have. Right. And as much as they kind of jump around from project to studio, etc., I just think they all have the same spirit of creating. However mad it might make the producers.
Right. Pay these guys a finder's fee.
They owe some back pay, I feel like, finder's fees.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot, I would say 10 to 12 that I saw that had gone on to work on Disney projects.
That's wild, but awesome.
Another key factor in the quality of the animation was this 7-week Australian expedition. So Bill took the whole crew, all the animators, to Australia for 7 weeks.
7 weeks. Wow.
As he talked about it in an interview, he said that he thinks the story was stronger because they weren't imagining the plants and the animals and everything that was going into the animation, for everything from the main characters to the background. Yeah. They were seeing these things with their own eyes. And
that's cool.
He said they needed to be in the place and feel the feelings so that the emotions would transfer to the screen.
Smart move.
So I really respect that because obviously, in a live action movie, it's not unheard of to travel to a location or whatever to shoot in different places. But for an animated movie, it's not as common.
Yeah, you don't need to do
that. So that was really important, especially to, Wayne. I feel like being from there, it was really important for the crew that was going to make this movie that had come from these precious stories that he told his children, and his wife had come up with specifically for their kids in the late 70s. It's that needed to come full circle.
Totally. Any little bit of realism helps.
So they now have a kick-ass script and a kick-ass cast and kick-ass animators. And they've also got Disney on their back. So the team used a combination of hand-drawn and computer-generated animation, including over 40,000 frames of computer-generated graphics. Wow. So that was still kind of new at the time, and especially to blend the two together. But they talked a lot about how that really saved them a lot of time in the long run. And it made them, it meant they were able to do things that you couldn't necessarily do as easily with hand-drawn animation. And to me, watching the film, I watched it probably 3 or 4 times just this week to get my head around it again. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the moments where they are in the leveler and they're in more of the human modernized part of the world, they use a lot more computer generated stuff there.
Yeah, I did see
and then
that
a lot
one,
more
yeah.
hand drawn when they're in the depths of like FernGully.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. I'm sure it wasn't, all one or the other. But most of the budget, so they had $24 million budget, and most of it was allocated to animation and to the soundtrack, which I think that shows.
Yeah, that comes through for sure.
The cast really believed in the message of the film, so they actually worked for like pretty scaled back wages.
Yeah, that's how
so
you do
the
it.
whole thing.
It's cool.
They really wanted to make it. It was a passion project for a lot of them.
Amazing.
Obviously, Wayne recalls like having differences with Katzenberg and Bill. They went back and forth. It was kind of like a tussle. But Wayne was also excited by, what we now know as the Disney Renaissance. It wasn't called that at the time,
right?
Because it was happening. But he knows that kicked off The Little Mermaid. 1989 kind of kicked off the resurgence of animation and people taking animation seriously.
Yes.
Which allowed kind of the door to open for them to push a stronger message in their animation.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I think that really did make all the difference because this is really when animated movies became so popular.
Right, yeah.
It was a moderate success in the box office compared to a lot of the things that we've talked about. A lot of them didn't really see a lot of box office success, but FernGully did okay. Probably in part due to the fact that it was kind of trendy at the time in Hollywood to get on the environmentalism train.
Yeah, yeah.
They made $33 million in the box office, but a lot of the marketing team felt like they could have like doubled that revenue if they could have just said, Walt Disney Presents. If they put the Disney name on it, they feel like it could have done a lot more.
Yeah.
There was a USA Today article from the time, and apparently the combined box office gross of FernGully and 5 other non-Disney animated films released in 1992 didn't equal a third of the gross for Beauty and the Beast. So they were the powerhouse.
They were.
It was definitely a David and Goliath situation.
All they needed to do was just put that Disney logo on it and boom.
Yeah.
It would have made that much.
It would have just exploded. That's really all it took.
Because this movie's fantastic.
Yeah. Midas touch.
And
I love Disney. Wild. Don't get me wrong, but man.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a lot of the same, similar animation in a lot of the characters. Like I saw Little Mermaid in Krista. Like I saw Ariel a lot.
The way that the movements and yeah, absolutely. There's a hawk at one point that looks identical to the one from The Rescuers Down Under. Like identical.
Oh, yeah.
Looks and sounds. So it's pretty funny. So critics overall, they liked the film. They were amused by it. But one of the reviews from the New York Times, they said that it was an uncertain blend of sanctimonious principles and Saturday morning cartoon aesthetics. And I'm like, well, what more could you want as a baby millennial? That's really where we were in life, so worked for me.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for too. The film was actually screened at the United Nations General Assembly for the Earth Day celebration in 1992. It's still screened at a lot of like big Earth Day celebrations.
Perfect film for that, yeah.
There was also a 1998 direct-to-video sequel.
Oh, okay.
And then, as with many of the films that we talk about, FernGully had a lot of success with home video sales as well, which I was definitely part of that. They released it on home video in August of 1992, and it was distributed by 20th Century Fox, and it sold over 5 million units by 98 when they were releasing the sequel.
Wow.
So it did really well on home video, too.
Pretty cool.
And something even cooler, I don't know the exact figures. I don't know if they were ever published, but portions of the film's gross revenue were also donated to Greenpeace, the Rainforest Foundation Fund, and the Sierra Club, and an environmental fund that the Smithsonian Institution had at the time. So that seems like a pretty big win.
Totally, yeah.
They got to really, make an impactful change with what they were creating.
Yeah.
Beyond just the legacy that it left in my mind. And,
They didn't just make it in hopes that people would like change the way things work. They actively used it to benefit the world themselves.
Exactly. And I mean, they changed a generation of thinking. And we'll talk about that too. Don't worry. But it definitely shifted my perspective. And I was so young at the time. And there are literally like journalists and activists that credit FernGully with being the reason that they went into environmental causes.
That's so cool.
So it's pretty cool.
That's super cool.
And all's well that ends well, because Jeff Katzenberg actually did call the team to say that he loved the film.
Nice. Good.
I guess he felt comfortable doing that when he knew that Disney had secured, their dominance.
We did a lot better than you this year, so I'm
okay with Yeah, I'm okay with giving you your kudos.
You
Whatever.
guys did so good. I loved it.
What a cute little movie. Good job.
What a precious film you guys put together. Wow.
Oh, man.
I just adored it.
So the team actually still, apparently, at least as recently as 2018, Bill said that they would have reunions, like the crew and everybody, they get together like almost every 5 years because it was really special work on it. And they all obviously had kind of one mind when they went into it. So they are still getting together and celebrating.
That's
and
cool.
I think that's so cool. Especially like just us knowing how film crews work. You don't necessarily have that luxury on every set.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, that is the production of FernGully. Many, many years in the making. And then I think that it's really stood the test of time, like I said. Would you like to hear about the cast now?
Absolutely. I want to hear about the cast.
I thought you might. Well, you know where we have to start.
With the Slater?
No. Not the Slater.
Not the Slater. Got it.
With the Robin.
Got to.
Robin Williams. I have a lot to say about Robin being cast because it really changed the Robin. It really changed the course of the movie.
Yeah.
And not even changed the course, but created the course of the movie. So Batty Coda is voiced by the legendary, incredible, spectacular, fantastic, amazing, no words to describe him, Robin Williams.
Summon the bat.
Batty, yes, the bat has been summoned. He is obviously like a traumatized fruit bat. And this was Robin Williams' first ever acting role. This is prior to the genie.
What?
Yeah.
So he'd acted but not voice acted.
Right, yes.
Okay.
This is his first voice acting role.
Got it,
Did I not say that?
I think
voice acting.
You said acting.
Okay. I meant voice acting. This is his first voice acting role. That's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
At the time, Robin had just been nominated for an Oscar for Good Morning Vietnam. And the screenwriter that I keep talking about, Jim Cox, he was seeing Robin Williams at all of these open mics across town. Like, unannounced, Robin would just show up and do these open mic nights and riff on stuff.
Okay.
And Jim, he actually wrote the character specifically for Robin or with Robin in mind because he saw his style of speaking, the way that he acted, and he knew that this would be perfect. I cannot personally imagine just going to an open mic night and seeing Robin Williams.
No.
Hollywood does not work the way that it used to by any means.
Not at all.
But I think that would be incredible. And Jim obviously saw the talent and really, he knew that he was onto something. And he knew, that Robin was highly sought after. So they got him for his first animated role.
That's way cool. Wow.
So he obviously wrote the dialogue to be very pop culture laden. It's very quippy. And in many ways, the film might not have been the success that it was, or maybe even completed without Robin, although it also caused a lot of the issues. So I said earlier, Katzenberg was very upset that they had cast Robin in FernGully because he was also cast as the genie in Aladdin. Yeah. And they were coming out around the same time, and Disney really did not want Robin's voice to be in two movies at once. And Robin kind of fought back on that a lot, actually. And he was like, it's my voice. I can do what I want with it. And I'm going to be, I'm going to do this. There were also other spats that he had with Disney about using his voice because he was very specific that he didn't want his voice to be used to sell things. So he hadn't made any kind of agreement to do that. And Disney kind of went back on their word and was using his voice to sell stuff. And that kind of rubbed him the wrong way as well.
Right.
But Robin kind of stayed true to this message and this mission all through that hardship with Disney and working on Aladdin as well. Yeah. So Robin was passionate about this message that we need to protect the environment because we only get one. There's only one Earth. And, if we don't protect it, then we're doomed. And obviously he was right.
In this universe.
Yeah. He stood up a lot to Katzenberg, and he's famously quoted, apparently, so he ran into George Lucas on the lot where he was recording, and George Lucas asked him what he was up to, and apparently Robin told him, "You wouldn't be interested, George. It's about the environment." He was not shy about how he felt about how everyone else was, treating environmentalism at the time or not engaging with it, and he was very outspoken for it.
Wow. Sick burn, Robin Williams.
Sick burn. One of my favorite things that I learned in my research is that Robin Williams provided over 14 hours of dialogue recordings.
Amazing.
And a lot of it was improvised from the script that
I
Cox
was
had
wondering
written.
how much of it was, because it's got that Robin Williams touch.
They originally intended to only give him like 7 or 8 minutes of screen time, I think, and they tripled the screen time they were going to give him because of what Robin brought to the table.
Good call.
Oh, I'm so thankful they did. I know they're so thankful that they did. And his dialogue, even though I've seen this movie probably hundreds of times, the dialogue is still like laugh out loud funny to
It's
me.
astounding. I was laughing. Yeah.
It's so perfect.
And it's so quick and just like going and going and going.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I love that quick, me and my like love of just that quippy quick, very witty dialogue. And Batty is that. If nothing else, he's that.
In a nutshell.
So our heroine, Krista, is voiced by Samantha Mathis, and she had appeared in dozens of films and soap operas throughout the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
She was actually in American Psycho.
Yeah.
Broken Arrow. And she also had recurring roles on Under the Dome and Billions more recently, which I have not seen.
No, me neither.
But yeah, she obviously was really sought after at the time as well. And they used a lot of her, they would film footage of them in the booths as they were recording to kind of influence the movement of the characters, which we've heard before.
Right, yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Very cool, very cool.
I love Krista. I've always loved Krista. And it's kind of funny. One of my best friends, Katrina, Christian knows her. Mm-hmm. But when we first met, she would sometimes call me Krista because I had really short, dark hair and I have green eyes.
Right.
And I'm like, 5'2". And so she all the time would be like, I would just like run around doing something, whatever. And she'd be like, okay, fly away, Krista. Like, she would call me Krista a lot.
That's funny.
And I also like stand with my feet crossed a lot. And I think she said that reminded her.
Oh,
Krista
sure.
Too.
Yeah.
Because she always kind of stood with her feet crossed and her hands behind her back.
Right.
It's funny. So our wayward, shrunken deforester logger is Zach, and he's voiced by Jonathan Ward.
Yeah. And
Jonathan Ward, his face looked really familiar to me. He was featured in a bunch of stuff like Charles in Charge, The Twilight Zone, Who's the Boss, Steel Magnolias, and he played the title character on a show that I've never seen, but it was popular in the 80s apparently, called The New Adventures of Beans Baxter. So if you've seen that, it's that same dude.
Wow.
that plays Zach.
Okay.
Here's where we get to the Slater.
The Slater.
So Pips, he's one of the fairy clan, and he seems to be like Krista's intended. They don't outright say it, but he seems to be the one meant for Krista.
He's got a lot of expectation.
Yes. And his character actually reminds me a lot of the character of Cocoam from Pocahontas, Disney's Pocahontas.
Okay, yeah.
That came out in 95, because it's that kind of protective, I'm from your tribe and I'm supposed to be with you and I don't like this outsider kind of vibe.
Right.
But yes, he's voiced by Christian Slater, which was a big deal at the time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was huge.
Huge.
Not like physically.
No, not physically. Physically, I think he was kind of small.
Yeah.
We know him from Heathers, where he played JD.
Yeah.
We know him from West Wing, Mr. Robot, and many, many others.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't actually know this, but apparently he got his start on One Life to Live. And he also did Broadway with Dick Van Dyke, like in 1980, like very, very early in his career. I had no idea. And as I was looking this up, I found out that Christian and Jonathan also apparently worked together on an ABC weekend special called The Haunted Mansion of Mystery in 1983. So I have to find it. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to find it. They apparently worked together on it. So Zach and Pips.
We'll do like a mini-sode on that or something.
It sounds right up our alley.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool. And
okay.
Maggie Loon, so she's the matriarch of the fairies. And obviously the name Maggie is really on the nose.
Magi.
Latin, skilled magician, astrologer, wise man in Christian tradition.
Yep.
That would be a magi. But
the gifts of the Magi.
Maggie Loon, like I suppose lunar moon.
Yeah.
But she's voiced by Gracie Zabriskie. And Gracie is from New Orleans, actually. And early in her career, she would perform poetry at coffee shops around New Orleans and Atlanta. So I feel like connected to that. And I feel like the poetry really, you can feel that in her role as Maggie.
It's really in her, in her soul, the character.
Yeah. And she's been in over 80 projects. She played Sarah on Twin Peaks in both iterations.
She played Sarah in Twin Peaks.
Sure did.
Wow.
And Mrs. Ross on Seinfeld.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me because I feel like she was not that that old when she played Maggie, but we do see that, we see it with Are You Afraid of the Dark. These actresses, they kind of treat them as matriarchs, even though they're not. They cast them as matriarchs, I should say. They kind of typecast, even though they're not ancient, like we assume that Maggie is.
Right.
So as we discussed before, the villainous Hexxus is voiced by the master of slime and sludge and sex, and that is Tim Curry.
Oh, yeah.
And beyond just his legendary performance as Dr. Frankenfurter in Rocky Horror, millennials will also know him as Rooster from the 1982 version of Annie, which I love. And I mean, his voice talents, there's nobody like him. There's nobody that will ever touch him in terms of the type of voice that he has and the types of roles that he plays.
Right.
I'll specify voice acting, since apparently I'm not good at that today. But he also, he was featured in Captain Planet, Darkwing Duck, The Mighty Ducks, Real Monsters, Hey Arnold, Recess, Johnny Bravo, The Proud Family, and his longest running animated role was as Nigel in The Wild Thornberrys.
Very cool.
So, smashing, I think.
Oh, I'll also say this quick thing. You were talking about something in one episode. I didn't catch it till I was doing the edit. I already forget. But you mentioned Over the Garden Wall.
Yes.
In something. And that just went right past me. I didn't even catch that you said that.
Went over your garden wall, did it?
Right. But I love that series. I've seen it many times.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it, and we should probably cover it one day just as an animated, kind of spooky children's thing, even though it wasn't from the 90s. But he did the creepiest character, or he voiced the creepiest character in that series, in my opinion, the creepiest.
Who was the creepiest character?
Auntie Whispers. Is
this the episode that you made me watch of Over the Garden Wall?
Yes.
The bell?
Yes. Absolutely.
I didn't realize that was Tim Curry.
That's old Tim Curry.
Okay, everybody go watch that episode. Man, Auntie Whispers.
Watch the whole series.
It is straight up creepy. It's so creepy.
Super creepy.
You go, Tim Curry. You're just nothing if not
amazing.
The most villainous, perfect voice that I can imagine. For villainous things, specifically. Also
in that series, Christopher Lloyd voices a character.
Yes, I knew that.
That may be what you're talking about.
That is what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
So in addition to the cast, I feel like the sound department also deserves a really quick shout out because a lot, as I started getting in the rabbit hole of IMDb, us millennials just like to watch movies so they can sit on IMDb and relate everything to everything else. So this is probably your favorite part of the podcast because we love to do this as well.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of the Foley editors and the artists on this film overlapped with a lot of our other favorite films. All Dogs Go to Heaven, American Tail, Great Mouse Detective, Prince of Egypt, Hocus Pocus, Spy Kids.
Makes sense.
Dozens of them. I could have literally gone all day with all of the Foley artists and sound editors that worked on this.
Yeah, wow.
Because they are just all legends in their own right. Two of them were Gary Hecker, that's apparently his nickname. He's really, really well known in the industry. And Jeff Wilhoit. So these guys are still some of the best in the biz. They're still doing sound. And I think they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
This is something that sticks out to me about everything that we watch is just how I remember it sounding when I was little. And speaking of sounds, I would be absolutely remiss not to point out and credit right off the bat the composer of the film, Alan Silvestri.
Yeah.
Because he has composed so many things that are legendary. But most exciting for me, Alan actually composed the music for Back to the Future.
Nice.
I think all 3 iterations.
Wow.
He was just Zemeckis' guy, go-to guy. Yeah, so he composed a lot of Zemeckis movies, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, Castaway, Polar Express, and even the upcoming Zemeckis Pinocchio.
Wow, okay.
Which is apparently coming out in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, so
That's wild.
He scored that as well. He has also scored other projects such as, get ready.
I'm ready.
Predator, Richie Rich, Tales from the Crypt,
Shoot.
The Parent Trap, Practical Magic, Serendipity, Contact, Stuart Little, Lilo and Stitch, and just for you, I also included The Mummy Returns.
Thank you. Yes. Wow, that's amazing.
He is also a Marvel favorite, and he's scored 4 Marvel installments, including Captain America, Avengers Infinity War, and Endgame. Wow. So all 3 Avengers.
Hell of a career.
Yeah. I can't say enough good things about him. He makes me feel things. He is an artist like no other. And I think it's so cool that he also did FernGully.
Yeah, that's way
and you
cool.
can hear it once you really know that. Because I watched it once, took a lot of notes, did my research, watched it again, through my week this week. And it was just, I could hear it. I could feel it. I could tell.
That's cool.
He even conducted the orchestra in a lot of them too.
Wow.
Which is insane. I feel like that's almost a different skill set to compose it, but also to conduct it in the room.
Yeah. It's typically, I mean, some people do both.
It's a pretty different thing,
It's typically different people's jobs, yeah. Different profession.
Incredible.
That's pretty cool. What a career.
And then I have one other fun fact for you, Christian, about the cast. It really might only matter to you. I'm not sure that it will matter that much to anyone else. But guess who was also credited under additional voices for FernGully?
Who?
Lori Hendler.
Who's that?
So we both worked with Lori. She played a villain on a film that we did together in 2018. I was an associate producer. You were a script supervisor.
No way.
Yes. She played Joan in the voices.
That's wild. Her. Ladies and gentlemen, her. Yes, she was credited as additional voices. Very nice
and honestly,
lady.
On a lot of things, too. Very nice lady.
I wish I'd known that at the time.
Speaking with her. Me too. I didn't know enough about her career at the time.
Amazing.
To have brought it up, but I wish that I could have.
That's way cool. Yeah.
Right?
No, I do care about that. Just forgot her name.
So let's kind of talk through some of the plot of FernGully. I'll try not to give everything away, but obviously there's so much like amazing dialogue and so many really good messages. And I just want to kind of touch on it for all these, just the years of adoration that I've had for FernGully.
Let's touch on it. Let's touch it.
Let's touch it together.
Mm-hmm.
So many times before we've said that the sound design is really important to us and our perception of the film, especially as young children. And FernGully is no exception to that. The movie actually opens with a sequence of what appear to be indigenous paintings or like the imitation of indigenous paintings.
Well, I thought that was super cool.
Yes. There's a series of handprints and like nature scenes that look painted in, depicting the oneness of man and nature. And it's a lot of like muted natural colors.
Yeah.
There are a lot of my sad whale sounds, as I called them. If you've been listening for a while, you'll know what I mean.
Yes.
And there are all these strings, but a lot of it is in like a minor key, so it feels very foreboding. And there's this like unsettling orchestral like vibration under everything. And that continues throughout Maggie's whole explanation of what our current predicament is. And by the time Maggie starts speaking, as a kid, I remember being glued to the TV, like completely just, I'm ready for this. And it begins on such a dark note. I find it so interesting that that's what the hook is.
Right. Yeah. It just felt very serious, very much like, oh, I should pay attention to this. This is
right. This is important. I need to hear these words. Yeah. There's this like stoic, solemn reverence to the opening sequence. She basically tells of the evil of Hexxus's origin. There were these tree spirits, which were the fairies, that were nurturing the harmony of all living things. And she says that their closest friends at the time were humans. And I really like this quote. I'm going to read Maggie's quote. She says, "As sometimes happens, the balance of nature shifted. So it wasn't good or bad. It's just the balance shifted. And Hexxus rose up from the bowels of the earth and rained down like poison."
Ugh.
And she says, "Many lives were lost, and the humans fled in fear, never to return. Most think they didn't survive." So as she's saying this, we see painted skeleton corpses, skulls, drawn like these Aboriginal paintings.
Right.
And there's these hands of a crowd that are kind of waving, and they sort of sink away into the red earth.
Very heavy. And
it feels very final and scary. Like, why did you have to tack that on, Maggie? Like, most think they didn't survive. So just this acid rain, this sulfur, and from the deep parts of the earth, it has killed off all humans.
And it's like, but I'm a human.
Right? So there's a sidebar that I wanted to go into because I was really, it got my interest the other day. So on YouTube, it was recommended to me. There was this short about the meteor that killed the dinosaurs. And it did such a good job of like conveying how one like rock at the right velocity can literally eliminate the majority of life on Earth. And I don't know if it was my Christian upbringing or the fact that I just haven't had a ton of exposure to that. I don't know if that's why, but I found it absolutely fascinating and absolutely terrifying. And it is just mind-blowing to know how fragile the physics and the principles are that hold our reality together.
Right.
It is nuts that this can just happen, and does sometimes in nature.
I was like, it happened once, it can happen again.
And that's kind of the point of the short. They talk about, because it never made sense to me, like one rock would hit the earth in one place.
Yeah.
But it talks about the way that the Earth itself is displaced by that, the shock waves and what that does to water and the atmosphere and everything else.
Right.
Because it's all very fluid, this world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
But good news for FernGully is that Maggie's magic has locked Hexxus away, and she saved FernGully with the powers of nature. And she gives these teachings about the history of humankind and their interactions with the natural world. But she imparts all of this with this edge that's a warning almost.
Yeah.
That she kind of has a fear herself.
Right.
But she's also conveying the hope that history doesn't repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
And as new generations usually do, her protege, Krista, who's the star of the film, she's speaking to Krista, and Krista blows her off. Everything becomes light again. We back out of this story, and Krista says, "Oh, that was so long ago."
Yeah.
And I got news for you guys. I got news for you kids. All the history that you think was so long ago, it was not. It really wasn't. The recent history that we know about is so short in time in comparison to the timeline of everything else.
Totally is.
We've talked about the history of the world, I guess, which is another YouTube short that I think everybody should watch.
Oh, yeah. Wait, that's so fun.
Oh, man.
I love that.
But that will teach you really quick that we're not the star of the show, and anything is possible.
Nope.
Wild. But clearly Krista is distracted, and she hasn't quite yet made the material as personal to her life.
Yeah.
But she will.
It's coming.
I also really wanted to dig into the Aboriginal paintings and culture, and I didn't get to dig too much into it for sake of time. But like we talked about actually on our episode before on the Skeleton Man, I did want to point out that there are a lot of global indigenous cultures that revolve around matriarchy or hold it to a higher regard, or it is more common than in a lot of the Western world. Mm-hmm. And I found that really interesting because I wanted to research Maggie and like why it would be a woman imparting this wisdom. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of those indigenous cultures, it actually is.
Yeah, I read that too in researching for Skeleton Man, that it was the exception for a Native American tribe to be a patriarchy.
Right? A lot of indigenous across the Americas and Africa, Asia, a lot of them were matriarchal. Yeah. And even like matrilineal, like the children would be named after and be raised with the mother's family. Right. And I mean,
it's almost like that makes way more sense.
Seems like a good idea to me. The woman does have the child after all.
Woman is the one who pushes the child out of her body. So. Man.
So Krista flies away, and we also get to meet Pips in this moment, the fairy that I was telling you about that's kind of aggressively pursuing Krista, it feels like. And he already seems jealous of her time that she's spending with Maggie. Yeah. Like he's
a real Dean from Gilmore Girls.
He really is. I'm so happy that Christian can make this reference now.
He's being a real Dean about this.
He's being a real Dean about this. It's really like jealous, literally, of her spending time with her, teacher, basically. Yeah. She's like, he says something like, "You're spending more time with her than you are with me." And Krista says, "Well, what can I learn from you?" And when she says this, he grabs her arm and stares into her eyes suggestively. Yeah. And it's just this brief moment, but I was like, okay, Pips, like, slow your roll.
They're all like half naked already.
They are,
I was kind of surprised at the animation choices.
The attire? Yeah. But I mean, they're fairies in the forest. What do you expect?
I mean, I've seen more clad fairies in my time.
What, Tinkerbell? Tinkerbell was not more clad.
There are so many fairies out there in the world.
In fiction. There are, that's
Fiction's
true.
In the world?
And probably in the world. We don't know. But at this time, speaking of more fairies, Chris is kind of swept up in this whirlwind of these bugs and fairies, and we're learning about the world around us, and this is where she sees Mount Warning and the cloud. Yeah. And she sees smoke for the first time. And so she's heading back to tell Maggie what she saw. And also she runs into these two birds that I wanted to mention had a major Jim Henson vibe, because they're like asking for the password. And it's straight out of like Labyrinth. Right. Like very like bumbling, goofy.
Yeah, they reminded me a lot of the Disney vultures or the buzzards or whatever.
Yes, those two.
Snow White and the Jungle Book.
I just remember the one from Jungle Book with the hair. Like
the crazy hair over his eyes.
That's totally, that's what these guys are definitely seem to be
silly.
Inspired by. Yeah. And it just seemed it was an introduction to the world, I guess. So it was a little bit out of place, but it was kind of goofy, and I can totally see it being a callback. But yeah, those guys never come back.
Never see them again.
Don't know what happens to those dudes. Mm-hmm. So Maggie kind of begins to better explain the circle of life now. And honestly, I think she does a more thorough job than Mufasa. She continues to talk about this balance in nature between forces of destruction and the magic forces of creation. And I couldn't help but notice how much more healthy of an outlook this type of thing might be.
Yeah.
Destruction and creation is a way more natural, holistic way to see it than good versus evil, which can be and often is applied very haphazardly to our social world by people that are very power hungry with all these archaic biases that they have, and they don't acknowledge modern science or knowledge, and then it leads to scary stuff like racism and extremist nationalism. And
it fits nicely into pretty much any agenda.
Right. Good and evil.
You can manipulate the definition of either of those things, whereas destruction versus creation kind of is what it is. It's
it exists. They both have to exist. They have to exist, and they can't exist independently. And it's more of a natural, like I said, it's holistic, and it doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It means it all is one thing. There is constant renewal, and it's like my Ouroboros. I have an Ouroboros tattoo. It's very much cyclical. Life is cyclical. Nature is cyclical. I think that's healthy. Although we do obviously see a good and evil slant to this in this movie, because the forces of destruction are, a lot of them, unnatural. And I think that's really where the true evil of this force of destruction comes from. It's not a naturally occurring evil in the case of this movie, or at least what Hexxus ends up feeding off of.
Yeah.
I'm also reminded, I have to get my musical kicks in here, of Mark's line from La Vie Boheme in Rent, where he says the opposite of war isn't peace, it's creation.
Oh, yeah.
And it's true.
Absolutely.
But Maggie tells Krista that there isn't a force in nature, emphasis on in nature, that could release Hexxus.
Right.
And she says that there are no poisons here on which he could feed. So there's this foreshadowing. FernGully is this pure place without the necessary fuel for something like Hexxus.
The toxicity.
So he can't, he's gone now. He can't come back without that fuel, that catalyst.
Right.
So she reminds Krista. Krista's trying to learn this magic from her. And she's unable to perform the same magic that magic is, like making ivy grow from this seed and repairing this tree. And she's frustrated that she can't do it.
Why can't I do it?
And Maggie emphasizes that you have to find it in yourself, because anyone can call on the magical powers of the web of life. And I think that's cool and very, like, empowering.
Yeah, totally. I also really appreciated how, like, even the humans themselves who were involved, like, yes, they were bringing the destruction, but they kind of were just obeying orders, just sort of ignorant.
It was a little bit unwitting.
Passive.
And we will definitely talk about that. Because I think that was a really important, thing to realize, that you don't have to be actively causing destruction to be enabling it.
You can be totally ambivalent and you just enable it. Yeah.
Yep.
You can be a vessel.
So after Krista leaves, Maggie checks on Hexxus' spirit, and she sees that it's still in the tree. But we see this gnarled, black, really scary looking tree where Hexxus has been imprisoned. And we have a movie now.
Now
we have a villain, we have a threat. And if we didn't have a movie before, the next scene introduces us to Batty Coda.
Yeah.
And he flies in all chaos and crash lands, and Krista casts a spell so that he can see the fairies. And every single quote from this point on from Robin Williams is just amazing to me. So I'm going to quote them, and you're going to remember them, and you're going to love them just as much, and you're not going to hate me for quoting Robin Williams a million times. It is so, so good. But when he first sees her, he's like, oh, what a strange little bug.
Yeah.
And then the very next one is one that I use constantly, where he says,
oh, gravity works.
and falls backwards off the tree.
I have heard you say that many times.
I quote that if I trip, which happens often.
Say gravity
Be honest
works.
with like everybody. I'm not the most steady person on my feet, and I say this so often. But we kind of get glimpses into Batty's life as a former test subject. We learn he has this antenna coming out of his head. It's very dark. I mean, there's no other way to put it.
It's really unfortunate. I hate that he has to live with this thing in his head.
Yeah, he lives with this thing in his head, and it's like his circuits keep crossing, or wires keep crossing. It seems like he's tuning into some other memory or some other life. And he's spitting out these quotes just rapid fire as he goes, but he says something like, graduate students, all gather forward. Like, you know that this is, you're being clued into the fact that he was a test subject in some factory, some sort of company.
So dark.
And it's really, really dark.
Ugh.
So we then begin the infamous Batty Rap, which is one of my very, very favorite songs from any animated film.
Way too catchy.
It is so catchy.
It's catchier than it has any business being.
You guys, I could perform the entire thing here for you, but I won't due to
much appreciated.
Not my own embarrassment or Christian's embarrassment of me, but just basically copyright reasons.
Sure. Yeah, we'll chalk it up to copyright reasons. Yeah.
But I will say, so you know the organ, the trill that starts the song off, that's very recognizable. The da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
I mean, classical music, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Do you know what it is, though? Do you know the name of it?
No, I don't know any classical music.
Oh my God. So I don't really either.
Just the funeral march.
But I've heard this like riff so often in horror, in pop culture references to horror, in songs that I like that sample it.
Yeah, totally. Very famous.
I'm going to tell you exactly what it is if you've ever wondered. Because you would not believe how long it took me to actually find the name of this tune. It is so ubiquitous. It is so ingrained in so much stuff. I had such a hard time finding it, but I did. It was composed by Bach in the early 1700s.
Yeah.
And it is his Toccata in D minor, BWV 565.
Okay.
So, if you are like me and you have ever wondered what that was or where it came from,
that's it.
Now you know. It was first used in film in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in 1931.
Amazing.
It was also used to jokingly reference horror as a genre in general in the movie Sunset Boulevard in 1950.
Okay.
Captain Nemo played it in the 1954 2000 Leagues Under the Sea. And there have been dozens of other references. I couldn't even list them all.
Yeah, it's very famous, yeah.
It's very, very famous. And it has been cemented in my mind since I can remember. I don't remember a time where I didn't know that. But it's so funny because I think Batty was probably my first introduction to it.
Yeah, that would make sense.
There are so many generations and decades of people that know this music. And music is weird. Time is weird. It freaks me out. I just have a hard time believing that baby Kaylin sat and listened to this in the early 90s. And it was composed by Bach in like 1701 or something.
What's amazing how many like little moments from songs, like little riffs that are so memorable and so like so commonplace.
Recognizable.
And there's so many, so recognizable. How much of that goes back to like Bach and like classical music.
The original Beethoven.
Like, hundreds of years old.
Hundreds and hundreds.
I just recently had that realization with the funeral march. It's beautiful too.
Yeah.
And I just never really knew that. It came up on a playlist I was listening to while researching for Skeleton Man.
I love music.
And I was just like, whoa.
I love it.
Yeah.
It brings us all together in ways that nothing else can.
Yeah.
At all.
Incredible.
But the Batty Rap. If you take nothing else from this episode, from me ranting, go and watch or rewatch the Batty Rap because it holds up. And there are all these really dark references in it that kind of epitomize what this podcast is about.
Totally.
So you're welcome for that reminder because it's incredible.
You're welcome, world.
And exercise a little prudence when dealing with humans. Humans?
At this point, Krista, they are arguing with the fairies because Batty's talking about humans and the fairies are like, humans don't exist.
What do you mean?
They're just human tales, instead of fairy tales.
Oh, one of my favorite things that he said when he talks about them wearing bad shorts.
Oh, me and my friend Logan quote that all the time. He says, human tails.
Humans don't have tails. They have big, big bottoms that they wear with bad shorts. They walk around going, hi, Helen.
So funny. Oh, my God.
So good.
Anyway, sorry.
No, I love that quote.
So funny. Like, I lost it. I laughed so hard.
It's really, really good. But Krista, believes Batty that humans are real and she wants to go to Mount Warning and see them for herself.
Right.
And Batty's very anxious, tries to convince her not to go. And another quote that I say regularly, she leaves him hanging on his tree branch, wrapped up in his wings, and she flies off toward Mount Warning and she says, I'll be right back. And Batty says,
why do I not believe you?
Yeah,
and I say that
made me
constantly
laugh,
too. And it's not even that the words are that funny. It is all about Robin and his delivery.
Yeah.
He just had this uncanny ability to deliver these lines in the funniest possible way.
Really did, yeah.
And I laughed at it as a kid, and I still laugh at it now.
It's clever.
Hundreds of times later. But I say that a lot if I'm, why do I not believe you? So there are these birds that are fleeing. We see these red X's on the trees, and
the magical red X's.
It looks like it's meant to represent blood. right? Magical red X's. So Krista's trying to understand this in her worldview, right? She doesn't know anything else.
Right.
But she sees that this machine, which she doesn't know is a machine, she thinks it's a monster.
Right.
We get our first glimpse of it.
What's the difference?
Right? That is the question that this movie really does ask us. But it's this very technologically advanced looking machine, and it's a mishmash of like chainsaw, furnace, and wood chipper.
Yeah.
It's just all of the above. And we also see Zach for the first time, and he's making his way through the forest, and he's marking the trees for slaughter with these red X's. And it looks so gory, honestly.
It really does.
They paint it in the light of this. It's just unthinkable what they're doing. It's death, you know. They're bringing death. They're spreading death. And he accidentally marks the Hexxus tree, and the paint bubbles up, and we get the first hiss.
Yeah,
the first
that was wild
Hexxus sound. And then when the leveler first starts up, I have to tell you, I don't know if it's some corner of my ADHD neurodivergence, but when that machine starts up, I hated that sound as a kid, and it still makes me sick now. I hate it. It's just this really loud, you know, I don't like loud noises other than live music, but other than that, I do not like loud noises in any capacity. And that just cut through to baby Kaylin inside me, hating that sound. And I feel like this movie shaped some of how I feel about that. Because I was so young when I was watching it. I was just so young.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm sure it left that doomsday feeling inside of you that makes you have that reaction.
Destruction is imminent. I mean, when you hear this sound, death is coming for you. There, you know, there's this thing. It's very, what's the word? Not even foreboding, but like, it's urgent. It's this urgency that it gives to the
it's
feeling.
Coming quicker than you think it's going to, because it you know, it gets to FernGully super fast. But like,
it does. We'll get there very soon. So Krista sees this human, and she tries to save him from a falling tree. So he like catches her in his hand, and she tries to save him, show herself to him, and tries to give him the gift of fairy sight. But instead, she gives him the gift of fairy size. So she shrinks him down to fairy size. And then he's stuck in this spider web, and he's almost fed through the teeth of the leveler, stuck to this tree. Right. But just in the nick of time, Batty comes and rescues him and Krista.
They were going in, and I was like, how are they going to get out?
Yeah.
I was genuinely concerned.
The peril.
I was
the
like,
peril here
Batty.
is real.
Got
like,
it.
Level 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 peril.
Yeah, the peril was up there.
You see the fire, you see the chainsaw teeth, like it is coming for him. So Krista finds his wallet and his pocket knife, and there's this moment that I don't think I would have gotten as a kid where Zach thinks that Krista's mugging him because she's brandishing his pocket knife at him, which I thought was funny.
Take anything you want, I won't tell the cops.
But this whole interaction reminded me of The Lion King, because Batty and Zach are unknowingly kind of trying to defend Krista then from one another.
Right.
Like, he's trying to kill you.
He's trying to kill you. I did not do this.
Definitely reminds me of Timon and Simba.
Absolutely.
In The Lion King. Of course, they did it first. FernGully did it first, I should say.
Right.
So, at one point, Zach, he's very, very disoriented.
Am I dead?
No. We can fix that for you.
Super funny. But we then stumble into our next musical number, which is another very like jazzy, sensual song sung by a lizard.
Yeah, it was just sort of like instant. And they're like, let's just get him away from them real quick so we can have the song.
We need to have a song. Which I think is really great. I liked it as a kid. I love the music in this movie as an adult, but I do have to comment and say that the songs in this film are so abrupt. They begin abruptly and they end just as abruptly.
Yes.
Like there's no rhyme or reason or warning. It's just, okay, we're going to sing now, and okay, we're going to stop.
To catch you off guard.
The song is sung by this lizard who's trying to eat Zach, voiced by Tone Loc, who is a Grammy-nominated 90s rapper and actor. And he sings, if I'm going to eat somebody, it might as well be you.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's pretty
Lots
funny.
of undertones.
Did he eat that snail? I missed it.
He ate the snail. He did. He ate the snail, slurped him right up.
Created a cartoon character that's kind of lovable because he's hanging out with Zach. They're having a moment. And then instead of eating Zach,
he eats a snail.
He eats the snail.
Yes. Well,
the snail had a
spits
face.
Zach out. He tries to eat Zach.
I know,
and
but
Krista talks him out of it, and he says,
just...
"Any friend of the fairies? It's a friend of mine." And he spits him out.
If I was
pretty good.
If I'd seen this when I was a kid, which I'm not convinced I didn't, but I don't remember most of it, the snail would have broke my heart.
Oh, yeah,
I would have.
Watching it back, I was like, I can't believe that he really just ate him. But that's the food chain. This is nature, I guess. Maybe it was on purpose.
Welcome to the food chain.
And that's what he says. Yeah, welcome to the food chain.
Still funny.
At this point, now having been almost eaten by a lizard, Zach finally gets the picture. Honey, she shrunk the kid. He is shrunken. He is fairy size. And Krista tries to fix it, but there's this moment. Great, I've been shrunk by an amateur.
That was
funny. And Krista's trying to fix the whole thing, and he's turning into an elephant, an orangutan, an anteater, all these different animals. And Batty's like trying to guess as if it's charades.
Oh, what does he call it? Darwin's grab bag.
Oh, Batty Coda. I just love
and then
so much.
He wanted her to do it again because she was going to try again. He was
She's like, I can try again. And Batty's like, yeah.
God, it's so funny.
So good. So now we're going to get into some of the stuff that you brought up earlier.
Right.
We go to the leveler control room, and there are these two like bumbly, fumbly kind of bros who are at the controls, kind of lazy.
Why are all these characters American?
I say it later in my notes that I want Zach to have an Australian accent, and it bothers me that he doesn't. They could have cast an Australian.
The two guys working the machine can be Australian, and then he could be some stupid American exchange student just looking for work.
True.
If you want to keep him who he is.
Yeah, but I mean, even Krista and Pips, none of them have accents either. But
none of them have. They should have all been Australian. But
maybe they wanted us in our little child minds to know that the real enemy is a lot of corporate America, or not even just corporate America, but American.
Could be. I wondered if you had any like insight into why they specifically made these people not Australian, even though they're literally in Australia.
Unfortunately not, and I did try to find out. Because it disappointed me watching it. But Americans are worse than Australians, arguably, so that's probably why.
I mean, not down to the person-for-person ratio, but like maybe our government.
No, that's true. Fair enough. So it feels like these two are sort of meant to demonstrate our unfortunate current human condition. They're kind of stuffing their faces, they're lazy.
Oh, they're just made to be the most disgusting.
They're made to be disgusting. Kind of the way that they interact with each other. Yes, he's just stuffing his face with cake.
That's wild.
And they end up cutting through Hexxus's tree, and they're kind of talking about it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
He's like, the leveler can handle anything. Like, I've never seen anything the leveler can't handle, ha ha ha, kind of thing. They're very nonchalant about what they're doing.
Our big machine can handle anything.
Clearly just looking for work and money.
Yeah.
Not much different compared to a lot of things that we see today. A lot of attitudes that we see today. So they level the Hexxus tree, and it's made into plywood, which is dripping with the Hexxus essence, if you will. And we follow this Hexxus character, the dripping, dropping through the machine, and he's gaining strength as he's drinking from the fumes. At one point, he has this very high-pitched, squeaky, squealy, slippery voice, and he calls it
mother's milk.
As he's drinking from the machine. Ooh, it is so creepy.
He has this super Voldemort vibe.
Yes.
Like
also
in his weakened state when he's still in hiding, basically. Because when he bubbles out of the tree and then you see him sort of grow and evolve as he's,
he's gaining
consuming the muck.
But fumes. You see how weak he was. And if not for the humans being that catalyst, like you were saying earlier, there was this human catalyst, there was this element of something that could be preventable that
had to use
makes things so much worse. It's the emissions from the leveler, it's the oil and everything that's used to run the leveler.
Because he was even saying
just the fact that they're logging in general. And
he said like humans are ingenious. Like when he sees the machine, he's like, oh.
What wonderful creatures, so clever, so helpful.
He continues to praise the humans,
they have such
the
great
wonderful
ideas.
Creatures and their machine.
Yeah.
He is in love with it. He is grateful for it. Which anytime as a kid you're seeing this evil villain character appreciate and love something so much, you automatically associate the two.
Right.
And you can tell that it's not a good thing if this villain loves it so much.
Yeah.
But he ends up hacking the PA system, dripping into there. And this is, he tells the humans that they're going to need to take the machine to FernGully because he has this vendetta. He has this vendetta against the fairies in this beautiful place. I as a kid, I can still hear him saying it.
Just have to work harder then. Double shifts. No breaks.
No breaks.
No breaks.
So yeah, then Zach and Krista are beginning to get to know each other at this point, trying to kind of share their cultures and cross-examine really what's happening and why they are the way that they are. One of the things when they have their introduction that I always loved is, Zach puts out his hand to shake it when they meet and say their names. And Krista says, "I'm Krista." And she just sticks her hand out into his face, doesn't know that he's trying to shake her hand. I feel like I did that as a kid to play, like pretend I was Krista.
Right.
But he's saying all these things about what she's asking him questions about what they're doing. And he says that he's not involved in it.
Liar.
He is a liar. And he also, she says that it's terrible, they're cutting down trees. And he says, "Only if you live in a tree." I do live in a tree. She answers very emphatically, and so now he's kind of understanding who he's with and denies his involvement because he doesn't want to. He wants to gain her favor at this point. I think he's got a little bit of a crush.
Why not?
Krista asks
She's
him
hot.
to show. Krista asks him to show her magic like his, so he shows her his lighter. And they
when they went under that,
they go under like a
plant,
a flower.
I was like, "What's he about to show her?"
Yeah,
what's the magic he's got?
I want to see. "Show me magic like yours," she says, and he takes her into the dark under this flower, and I'm just like,
"Got a little bit of magic for you."
This is where toxic love comes in. So we did a whole episode on it. I will try not to spend too much time on it here. But if you want to break down that, you can obviously go listen to that episode and just go watch it again as well when you go watch Batty Rap. It's just so good. It's the stuff of nightmares, the skeletal, fire, brimstone-y kind of feeling.
That skeleton's dope.
They incorporate the toxicity of the narcissism. They incorporate the greedy human beings will always lend a hand with the destruction of this worthless jungle land. Like, they incorporate everything. The money, the greed, it's all there. And it is pretty dark, if I do say so myself.
To put it simply, it's pretty dark.
So as Zach and Krista continue to get to know each other, I thought it was kind of funny because Krista said, "What's a job?" It was they clearly come from two different worlds. And we get this beautiful song, another lovely, abrupt musical number, Raining Like Magic, which is performed by children's entertainer and staunch environmentalist in his own right, Rafi.
All right.
This is Rafi singing Raining Like Magic. Also highly recommend going back and listening to that one. But it's really pretty because you have the dripping rain and the trees, and it's very lush and green and pretty.
Yeah. It's
also just so 90s pop vibe. And so they're sharing their cultures, and it's very like Tarzan style. And we get this quote,
"You are one bodacious babe."
And this is when I really missed not having the Australian accent. Like, they should have just had it. They should have had them be Australian.
They really should have.
But they gave the Australian, what's the word? Slang. They used Australian slang, at least. Australian slang. And so he's carving Chris's name into a tree then. And clearly he's not winning any awards in listening. And Batty is, as he has been this whole time, very down on humans, which I thought was really funny that Robin Williams got to take out all of his frustration and anger at humankind in this really funny character. Because you can feel him. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the opinions were not unfamiliar to Robin, but obviously they're Batty's opinions about how humans suck, because Batty's been very wronged by humans and has every reason in the world to dislike them.
Humans do suck.
Batty says,
"Humans can't feel anything. They're numb from the brain down."
Yeah.
And we're coming up on my favorite and probably most quoted line from this film. They arrive in FernGully, and Zach is talk of the town. They're all interested. This is a human. And Batty kind of feels left out, and he says that nobody cares about me. Nobody's listening to him. Nobody's listening to his opinion on the humans because he knows that the humans are dangerous. And Batty says, "No one cares about me." And Zach responds and says,
"I do, Batman."
You sure?
"I'm positive."
Only fools are positive.
"Are you sure?"
I'm positive.
And then he goes off, "I fell for it. Why do I always fall for it?"
So funny.
I do that all the time. I like when people, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they'll get caught in that quote with me, I know they're good people. I'm like, you know FernGully. You know Batty. And like we were saying, Batty's dialogue continues to play at all of these social issues. And it flew right over my head as a kid, but as an adult watching it, they really tied in a lot of social stuff into Batty's way of being. There was one that I didn't love, but it definitely got the message across. And I think it was meant to be ironic as well, obviously. But they talk about there are humans back in the forest. And Batty answers, there goes the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, I also think there was a Price is Right reference because one of his channels, Twitch and Tune, and he says there's like a ding ding sound like you would hear on a game show. And he says, price check on prune juice, Bob, price check on prune juice. By the way, go watch The Perfect Bid. It's a documentary. I think it's on Netflix now. And it's really, really good if you're here, you like nostalgia. So if you watched Price is Right when you were home from school growing up, sick home from school. Yeah. Bob Barker.
I never really watched it, but I
watch it.
Obviously
Great.
love the show.
Oh man, I watched it a lot. Watched it with my mama. She loved Price is Right. So Pip's friends actually come in at this point, and I did want to just point out that they are voiced by Cheech and Chong, these ancillary fairies, and it was the first time they'd worked together in like 6 years. So they didn't have a whole lot of dialogue to do, but apparently they like shared a pizza and just knocked it all out in a session.
That's funny.
And got to hang out together again.
Yeah.
And they bring in Zach's Walkman that they found, which is huge. Obviously, it's human size compared to Zach now, who is fairy size. And the kangaroo that we know and love brings it in for them very kindly.
The kangaroo, the dangaroo.
And Pips is like trying to explain what it is and clearly has no idea. So Zach steps in, because he's aggravated at this point, steps in and turns it on. And we get another song, dance break.
Yeah.
I knew that this was recognizable to me, but I did not know what song it was. Do you know what the song is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's from the 60s. It is The Land of a Thousand Dances by Wilson Pickett. And
I was like, oh yeah, this song.
Yeah, everybody kind of knows it.
I know it.
It's kind of in the zeitgeist somehow. And I didn't know the name of it, but now I do. And now you do as well.
Well, I didn't know the name of it, but I knew the song.
If you're listening, you now know the name of it. You're welcome. You can wow your friends when you watch FernGully at your party next time.
You're like, oh wow, you know everything. It's because I listened to That's Pretty Dark podcast.
But it just reminds me yet again that music is really one of the only good things about humanity. Truly. Through the decades, through the ages, music is one of the only good things we've ever done. So the next song comes up pretty quickly, and Alan Silvestri actually wrote, I think, helped compose this song, A Dream Worth Keeping. Yeah. And Zach and Krista explore these absolutely mind-blowingly gorgeous bioluminescent caves, which are a real thing in that part of Australia.
Right. Got real trippy.
I think I have dreamed of this place many times, like in my literal actual dreams, because just seeing it so young, this was peak romance to me. Again, there are these movie moments that stick with me where we see these characters kind of falling in love. Yeah. And this one it's just so pretty. Like, it's animated so well. The colors are so pretty.
Yeah, it was nice.
And the song is beautiful. And we get some, like, Avatar adjacent magical hand-holding, which is definitely not a euphemism for sex, I'm sure.
I'm sure it's not.
And then totally. Krista spins like a Sky Dancer toy. I noticed. She spins real quick to dry off.
Yeah.
And she leaves Zach alone and goes back to talk to Maggie. And when she leaves Zach, this is where we discover that there's oil leaking.
Oil.
And he knows that it's from the leveler.
The leveler.
And of course, Maggie is already clued into this. She knows that
Hexxus is.
Yes, she's totally clued in, and she knows that there is. She's pretty much catatonic when Krista goes back to try to talk to her. Yeah. And she knows that a force outside of nature is at work, is what she says. Yeah. And it's one that she can't stop. And this is kind of our falling out moment. Obviously, Krista discovers that Zach wasn't being honest with her about the fact that he was involved. So she feels very hurt by that. And she notices that there's a tree that's chopped down, and she realizes the story that he didn't really tell her, but he kind of let her believe her own understanding, which was that the X's were magic and the leveler couldn't go beyond them. And she finds a tree that has an X on it that's been cut down.
Right.
So she's starting to get the picture that humans maybe do suck, just like Batty said. And she's realizing that the humans are at fault for what's happening. Yeah. And by this point, Zach is actually pretty remorseful, but Krista's running away, and the fairies are kind of gathering to summon their magic against Hexxus because they know he's coming back. And I thought this was kind of cool for a kid's movie because at this point, Zach is feeling really guilty about what he did. Yeah. And he definitely hates that he's done this, and he hates what he's been involved with now that he's seen the other side of the coin. He's seen the grass is greener on the other side, it turns out. And he now knows that. And I think it's really cool because Batty, the character that's been on his case the entire time and doesn't like him and has more reason than anybody to be biased against humans. Yep. comes to Zach and tells him,
truth doesn't always win friends, but it certainly influences people.
And you're not half bad for a hominid. He kind of forgives him.
Yeah,
and
it was a nice
for
moment.
that to come from Batty is really cool. And it's also really cool to have that example of the fact that it's healthy to grow and shift your perspective, and you don't have to think the same thing for your entire life. Like being rigid or having this rigidity to your beliefs is not morally superior. It is not the better option. The better option, in fact, is to grow. And it was just cool to see that a character can kind of turn and shift, even if they've been dishonest about it. And that it's okay. You're allowed to change your mind based on new and better information. And please let that be the PSA to you if you needed to hear it today. It's okay to change your mind.
Yeah. What's that meme say? Normalize,
yes.
like allow your opinion to be changed based off of like evidence and like proof of things.
Please.
Don't stick to your beliefs despite everything pointing in the opposite direction.
Yes. Sticking to your guns, you know, there's something to be said for that, but it's not the be all end all. And if you get better information, you're definitely allowed to change. Change is good.
Can be. Scary.
This is me talking to my younger self as well. Sure, it can be scary.
Change is scary, but
Zach's going against everything he's known, you know, to stand with the fairies and say, okay, you're right. Like, this is bad, and what I'm doing is bad, and that's okay. Right. And I like that Batty also is offering that, you know, kind of shoulder.
They're both seeing the other side for a second, and they're both accepting it as a reality, like a
they're
truth
coming together
as
they see the other side, and it's so great.
It's nice,
man. Let your kids watch this one. It's a good one. Such a good one.
Do it.
I want the future. Like I'm talking to my younger self too, because I didn't take this to heart really until I was older watching this. I really didn't have that perspective until the last, you know, several years of my life have forced that on me, and I wish that I had taken it to heart sooner.
I'll be a better person now that I've seen FernGully.
I think you will. And here we go. I'm not going to get into the finale as much. I really want you to go watch it for yourself or rewatch it.
No spoilers, all right.
I'll try not to completely spoil it for you, but there are a couple quotes that I like that I do want to touch on.
Yeah.
At this point, Hexxus is on the way, and so they go to Maggie for advice and help. And Maggie kind of sacrifices herself in order to preserve the magic of the fairies and to help Krista come into her own. And she gives Krista this really beautiful speech because it's not hateful. Nothing about this is based in hate or othering or otherizing people or entities, I guess, in the case of Hexxus. Or humans. It's very, it comes from a place of love all around. Because Maggie says, look for the hero inside yourself, Krista. Look for the good and loving heart inside you and all others. We all have power, and it grows when it is shared.
Damn.
So she's really empowering not only Krista, but she's also encouraging Krista to look to the good and loving heart inside all others as well.
Damn,
I just think that's cool. That doesn't happen in a lot of movies in general.
No.
That I see. It's pretty unique, and I think it's so valuable. And everybody can take something from that.
Yeah, definitely.
But I talk about it with a lot of my friends, a lot of people that are seeing this division in America and in the world at large. There's all of this division and the tendency to have confirmation bias, to assume that everything that you think is right, and to really, like, social media has fed into this otherizing, where the other is wrong and you were right. And that division only harms us. It harms us as a whole from both sides, and it allows other forces to take over the power that should be ours in general. So I think it's really relevant. That's all.
No, totally. It's almost like you're giving your own power away to something else.
Yeah, you're giving it away to something that's not productive.
You're feeding it.
You're feeding this beast versus taking power into your own hands. And a lot of people that I see on social media, they think that they're empowering their side or themselves by just spewing hate toward the other side.
Right.
And that's never the answer. It just never is.
Nothing good.
Benefits nobody. And speaking of which, the Leveler is now approaching, and I remember being a kid and watching this scene with the Leveler coming after these fairies and these animals, and the animals are all absolutely terrified, and it's horrific to watch, honestly, because you know that there's nowhere for them to go. Krista says, this is our home. Where else will we go? This is their environment. This is their biosphere. This is their habitat. This is where they belong. This is all that they know. And they're being chased out of it.
And even as it's cutting down trees, it's like hurting my feelings.
The animals don't know what's going on. That's the other heartbreaking part of it, is that they have no idea what's coming for them. And that's true in life as well.
Right.
It just hurts me. And I think this stuck with me more than anything else in terms of fear in this movie, because I remember how I felt about the environment after watching this film and wondering like how anybody could lead these innocent animals and plants to meet a fate like this. That's so devastating. And the fear and the terror, like that just doesn't leave a good impact anywhere. And it's awful.
Never.
So they go to war with Hexxus somewhat. They're fighting back, and I won't give all the details of that, but I do think it's funny that Batty is trying to fly away, and Zach's trying to get the attention of his cohorts that are in the control room of the leveler. And Batty's trying to save Zach and get him out of there, but his frequencies shift on his little antenna in his head. And he's changing course, and then soon he's giving all these quotes, and it sounds like they're movie quotes. I've always assumed they're movie quotes. No,
yeah, they're old movie quotes. Yeah.
And they take Zach. He takes Zach into the belly
At one
of
point,
the
he does
beast.
a John Wayne impression.
Yes, he does. He does this John Wayne impression while he's giving these quotes. But the ones that I found, I did find what they were from originally, or some of them. Okay. The "Fasten Your Seatbelts, It's Going to Be a Bumpy Night" was actually Bette Davis in All About Eve in 1950.
Wow. Okay.
The "We're Going Full Throttle, That Ought to Keep Those Rebel Fighters Off Our Tail" is obviously Star Wars, Episode 4. And I couldn't figure out the last one. I looked all over the internet trying to find it, but he says, "Lock and load, gentlemen, time to rock and roll." And the only thing the internet could provide me came out way after FernGully, but there were memes from some Call of Duty game where the president in the zombies game iteration says, "Lock and load, gentlemen."
I think I know the "lock and load, gentlemen"
I know,
quote from the game.
Sounded...
No, from the game you're referencing.
Oh, okay. There you go. It's Call of Duty.
Yeah, I played those zombies games in Call of Duty.
But it all just sounded familiar, and I'm not sure how it could possibly sound familiar to me as a kid, but it did. Yeah. It totally did. And like you said, he kind of gives a John Wayne voice, and at one point he's got a helmet on, and he's kind of tossing it back to different like his characters in Good Morning Vietnam.
Yeah. It's amazing that he's jumping around, I
thought it was really good.
Very cool.
And the other point that I want to make about the finale is that although we think that Zach might be the key to solving everything, and he's the one that knows the leveler and knows the situation, it does end up kind of going back to Krista and falling back on her skills and her power and her assuming that power in herself. Yes. Which I think is A+. Like, good job.
Good job, guys. You did a good thing.
Good job, Jim and Bill and Wayne.
Oh, yeah.
And I do think that the way that they end up, they have this epic Sylvester swell, and the way that they do end up winning, I won't tell you exactly how, but obviously they come out triumphant.
Yeah, they don't all get murdered.
I feel like the way that it happens kind of comes from the inside out, and I think that's also a metaphor for change and changing hearts and changing minds, which is what they were trying to do with this film. Right. Yeah. And at the end, Zach is going to leave FernGully, and there's this sad Tarzan moment, where they have to go back, to their place, their kind. And she tells him that Hexxus can't harm FernGully anymore.
But humans still could. That's why I have to go back.
And he says that part of him wants to stay, and she says there's a part of you that will always stay. Right. And I think they both will take that experience they had with the other side into what they do in the future. Totally. So it's, for being cheesy, corny, like kids movie, it's still very powerful, I think. And I really like it a lot.
Absolutely. It was really, really well done. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also love, we get this last peaceful sweep of FernGully to end it off. Yeah. And there's this end title card that I love that says, "For our children and our children's children." Yes. Because they want this legacy to continue. So that, that's FernGully.
It's really hitting all the notes. Like, it's really just like, it wasn't too cheesy. It wasn't too forced. Like, everything they were saying felt very natural. Like,
I think so.
The message is clear and it makes sense.
They made it make a lot of sense for even a very young mind to grasp. They put it into terms that just made a lot of sense. And I love this movie.
Yeah, it was really good. I'm glad I finally had a reason to watch it and enjoy it for what it is. I'll be watching it again.
I think that you should. I really think that you should.
It's a good one.
And it's still a mixed bag for me, because I still get a little bit of that weird, nostalgic, depressive feeling. Darwin's grab bag. Because I'm really grateful for the message of the movie, what they did, but it really is pretty dark, and I saw it at such a young age that it definitely left that kind of dark imprint on me when I watched it.
It's darker and heavier than I ever thought FernGully would be. Like, just seeing stills from it or seeing animation styles from it, I never would have thought that it got so dark.
Deep and
with
dark.
Hexxus and everything.
Yeah. I think that we're also lucky because not all of the darkest movies that we know from this time period we're going to cover have a soundtrack of this caliber that can kind of pull you out of that too.
Right.
I think that was a huge redeeming point for me in terms of, I think it's a great movie, but redeeming in terms of the way that it leaves me feeling is the music and the soundtrack.
Not quite like All Dogs.
No, exactly. Not quite like All Dogs, because All Dogs had a soundtrack.
Bit disappointing.
Didn't hit the spot like FernGully does.
Yeah.
So we've kind of touched on it off and on, but FernGully quite literally inspired an entire generation. And it was made at a moment in time, like I said, when Hollywood was just kind of jumping on the train and getting on board with environmentalism.
Yeah.
It is still referenced by politicians and activists to this day that are our age, especially Hexxus and Batty. And they talk about it in their attempts to shed light on the dangers of deforestation, pollution, global warming, animal testing, climate change, and all these other crises that humans are guilty of perpetuating in our world today.
Again and again.
And like I said earlier, I talked about that journalist that kind of called FernGully one of her inspirations going into environmentalism. She talked about FernGully had this element of oil with Hexxus, but it was mostly pushing this logging and deforestation issue, which was the hot button issue at the time in the 90s.
Right.
And she mentioned that now that the attention has shifted more toward climate change and fossil fuels, FernGully, if it were to be made today, might be based more in the polar ice caps or somewhere.
Ooh, yeah.
Which I think is a really cool concept. And although there's already been a sequel to FernGully, I still think the concept could be repurposed for kids
revisited,
today.
yeah.
And you can watch it today and still get the same feeling from it and the same
vibe,
message, but I do think that it could go into more detail. I think that the cyclical nature of these issues is one of the reasons that this movie still gives me that same depressive feeling like All Dogs does, because it's still plaguing us. And although there is this motivational, hopeful, inspirational feeling push behind it, it is still kind of hard to sit here and look at where we are 30 years after this came out and know what we know now and where we've ended up, and to know that it's not a lot better,
change,
not much change that's been affected.
Yeah.
But we absolutely cannot argue that the seed was planted in minds that were very young, that are no longer all that young. And there are many organizations now that didn't exist 30 years ago that are lobbying for environmental regulations and animal rights and more. You know, the animal rights conversation is huge now compared to what it was. There are a lot of companies now that focus on doing away with animal testing, especially cosmetics companies, which were some of the worst offenders for a long time.
Yeah.
We see more and more of those.
That has been a big change.
That are changing.
Yeah.
And I think that's really great. And I think a lot of us think back to Batty, you know, when I try to buy things that are sustainable, things that are, you know, not tested on animals. And part of that is because of Batty Coda, lovable Robin Williams.
Yeah.
It's also true that a lot of the damage that has been done in this 30-year period was done by the same generations who were leading the charge 30 years ago. And millennials, even though the oldest of us are in our 40s now, or getting to be 40 years of age, we're still kind of stuck jockeying for power in the broken systems that were created and have been fed into by the generations previous. And millennials, as we're coming into power, getting older, we are, a lot of us, fighting for all kinds of social and environmental justice and change.
Yeah.
And I still have hope because, for one, I know that thanks to nature itself, the generations that were in control will not be in control forever because they're all
possible. About to die.
How's that for pretty dark?
Get out of here, you
it's just
anti-environment, anti-animal rights.
And I do hope
assholes.
That when we are in charge, or more, when we start to get more of a foothold as we're beginning to get, I hope that those changes are lasting. And they said in the end card, I hope that our children and our children's children will have a better outlook. I understand that the studies don't point to good things, and I'm aware of all that stuff. Climate change is real and terrifying. But I'm still hopeful that we can affect change in big and small ways. And I think a lot of it is thanks to the things that we grew up on, like FernGully. I love it.
Wow.
Gotta say thanks to you for listening.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks to Wayne and Diana Young and Bill and Susan Croyer. I hope that you have a lovely reunion next time you guys get together. Also, thank you, Jeff Katzenberg, for not shutting down the whole production or buying up their brewery.
Right.
Glad that you let them make this movie. Thank you, Robin Williams. Thank you, Tim Curry.
Thanks, y'all.
Man, thank you, Robin Williams. Just gotta say that again. Thank you, Robin Williams, for existing.
Honestly, though.
Wherever you are, so grateful for what you've done in all of your career. But FernGully has a special place in my heart.
He's just being the genie somewhere.
Talent like that just is so rare.
Yeah, it really is.
And I, again, got to shout out that awesome Vanity Fair article. I pulled from different places on the internet, but that article was really helpful in chronicling and documenting the history of the production of FernGully, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's very cool.
So hats off, Vanity Fair.
Yeah, and thanks to you, Kaylin, for this wonderful, delightful
Thanks to you
episode.
for listening and finally watching this damn movie that I've been trying to get you
Thanks
to watch.
for making me watch it, jeez.
Forced you.
well worth the time spent.
I hope the listener feels the same way.
They better.
They better. You guys better.
They better. We're going to send the leveler after them.
Uh-oh.
Get your act together, listener.
Get it together. Thank you again for listening.
Thanks, guys.
We will be back soon with something else nostalgic and beautiful and terrible all at once.
Yes, all the best
Destruction
things.
and creation. Go watch it. Put it on for your kids.
Or yourself.
Or yourself.
Or your animals. My cats would love it. I think they did like it.
My cats liked it, I know.
They were both chilling with me on the couch. Watching it, yeah. Well, until next time, guys.
Yeah, have a great one. Whatever time it is where you are. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark. Written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.